Storybook style?
Yes.
All right. See here. In factions, luck is more flattened. This causes more reliable success, but also less giant surprises. How do you feel about this change? Yeah, because you can guarantee, whereas with dice, obviously dice have averages and probabilities that play out over a long period of time. But one match is not necessarily a long period of time. So the problem with dice is that they can give one team a greater advantage with better rolls through the course of a whole game.
Right.
Whereas with the cards, you have essentially a simulated set of dice rolls. Every possible combination of results on 2 6-sided dice.
Right.
So each team, having their own separate deck for the result cards, has an exact spread of the same luck results.
Most games have some sort of percentage of luck in them.
Absolutely.
So.
And I think I and most people prefer that. I mean, versus pure luck, like a true dice game, right?
Or Candyland.
Like Candyland, right? Yeah, exactly.
Horrible.
Candyland, great example. Or a game that is pure determinism, like chess, right?
Yeah.
There's no randomness in chess
All
except
strategy.
for the human mind.
Yep. It was great.
This isn't a nice balance between those two, which I prefer. I like that you can make plans and execute them with a pretty high degree of success,
Sure.
but there is still that chance that something unexpected is going to happen, either on your side or the enemy team's side. And that's fun. I really enjoy that. I like having to play with luck rather than trying to eliminate it entirely from a game.
Yeah, and if anybody, out there is a card counter, you will start to see either you're going through all your good cards or going through all your bad cards, and you're like, dude, this has to end, or, at some point in this game.
It's such a habit, yes.
I know, that's what I always do.
Yeah.
So I'm either like, this has been really good, I'm about to be depressed, or I've been depressed for so long, and it's probably going to continue.
And then you can make plans around that, right?
Yeah, right.
That's what I do, is I make plans around, okay, we've had a bad run of cards for a long time, so statistically there's more good cards left.
Coming up, yeah.
So you can plan against chance that way, unlike with the gambler's fallacy.
Right.
But specific to the cards and the flattening of luck for the question's purposes, one big change from Duel of Ages 2 to Worldspanner Factions is that it's still a similar system with drawing the cards, but in Duel of Ages 2, the luck was all based on a system of 2 10-sided dice rolling against each other. Now it's a series of 2 6-sided dice rolling against each other.
Okay.
So there's been a narrowing of the upper ends of probability, which means that a character who has a higher value in the stat going into a challenge has a much higher chance of success versus failure than they did before. Your stats are more important now for the results, which kind of gets into what you're saying about the difficulty sometimes of hitting an enemy that has high armor.
Right.
Because now if you have very high armor, that makes even more of a difference than it ever used to. Your chances of actually piercing through high armor is less now because a higher amount of armor means more statistically because of the fact the dice are smaller. There's less variance.
Okay. Yeah, I actually know about the difference of the dices.
That's just in pure nerd details.
Dice.
James did a stellar job explaining the dice ranges. The challenge cards in Duel of Ages 2 mirrored a D10 roll-off. Factions uses a D6 roll-off instead. The D6 ramps up success faster when you are better in a challenge. For example, at +3, you have a 92% chance of hitting with an attack. In Duel of Ages 2, +3 would have been only 79%. At +5, you reach 100% certainty, while in Duel of Ages 2, you're only at 90%. As a result, being better than your target is more important. Another clean bit of math happens as well with D6. If you are better than the target, you cannot fop. If you are worse, you cannot amaze. As a result, you can have more confidence when gaining favorable matchups. Of course, if you've played XCOM, you know even 95% won't always save you.
What are your thoughts on the introduction of gold and purchasing into factions? James, do you want to explain a little bit what gold has done to factions?
Sure. So in Duel of Ages 2, whenever you would complete challenges, you would typically get equipment cards as the reward. Now that is still often the case, but not always the case. I'd say now in at least half or most challenges, you instead get a item called gold. Gold is just literal gold coins, right? It's
Yeah.
basically a point
not
reward
literal
system
gold coins.
that is used. I wish it was though.
That game would be way more expensive. just saying. Sorry.
Collector's edition content.
Collector's edition, actual gold, literal gold pieces. Sorry, I cut you off. Right?
Yeah. So your characters accumulate this currency as a reward from those challenges. And that currency can then be traded to get equipment cards from various markets on the different faction sites on the map.
Right.
And also, which I think is the best part of it, the reward of the currency can be used for more than just purchasing cards.
Yeah.
You can also use it for other tactical advantages, like going to the Dreadmark Order faction and having them kidnap somebody, banishing them to a different dome. Now, another important part about gold as a system you can use within the game is that it isn't just a way to expend this generalized reward system in exchange for equipment items or tactical advantages, but also if you do hoard it, it is the tiebreaker for the game. So if at the end of the game, right. The same number of victory points on either side, then the winner is the person whose team has the most gold.
Right.
So you might want to hold on to some of it,
so
in some circumstances.
If you're near the end of the game and you notice that you guys are tied off of factions and combat, and you're starting to notice that, on each side there's a certain amount of gold, you probably don't want to go into some sort of market and buy, like your third sword, because, why not? You want to hold on to that gold to contribute to the tiebreak.
Absolutely.
So, gold is also really important for Lith and Lith tribute. So there's a space in the game called Lith, and you can tribute either your cards or your gold to gain favor with Lith.
Yeah. Lith is essentially like the queen of the games, right? She's overseeing the whole thing.
Is she a creature or is she like a person?
She's like an entity, right? Who takes humanoid form sometimes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Lith, you're trying to gain tribute with her, right? And so you can give her this gold as well, which is a whole point.
Yeah.
That's
by the entire
victory point, glory point.
Yeah.
By the end of the game. And so you also wanted to use gold for things like that as well. And so, anyway, I think gold is a really good introduction into the game, and just for different things. And again,
absolutely,
it's also good because, like you said earlier, not everything is rewarded just by cards.
Exactly.
In the old Duel of Ages, everything was just a card reward.
I like how it generalizes the reward structure for the characters.
Yeah, because now you have cards, you have boosts, and now you have gold as kind of your interacting things that people can carry.
Absolutely. And since a lot of characters now start with gold instead of cards, it opens up their options at the beginning of the game more than it did.
Factions isn't just a combat game. In fact, it's less a combat game than a resource management challenge. Call it what you want, a blend, a marriage, a love child, but Factions is a unique creation that requires both tactical RPG-style skill and sharp Euro-style efficiency to win.
All right. Now this is basically a rhetorical question. Do you feel the game art is an improvement over Duel of Ages 2?
Such a silly question. The quick and fast answer is yes. It's an improvement. I mean, here's the deal, though. Like, I do love the old art of even Duel of Ages 1 and Duel of Ages 2.
The icons.
Yeah,
they're just 3D art from like 2000.
It's just fun. Like, that's what art has nostalgia for me. Except for a couple of the characters in Duel of Ages 2 were horrible. Like, objectively bad, but that's okay. Even in that, there's, nostalgia.
We'll not name any names. The artists did their best.
Yeah, you want to go back. That's true.
They did.
We're not going to call out any artists.
No. Artists work hard, bro.
We appreciate you all, and you don't make any money. So, anyway, so the art of the game is definitely more improved. What I love about the art is you can see from, the stuff back here, and we have all these great, character cards that are out. There's just a big variance. Right? It's not a single style of art. Like, one art might look like historical, like a historical picture, while the other one is more like a 3D sort of model, more stylized. Some look more like watercolor. I really enjoy that. There's not just a kind of a a standard for each one.
I understand what you're saying, but I respectfully disagree to an extent.
Oh, good. That's what I wanted.
Because art is somewhat, but not totally subjective, right? So I think that actually the art style is much more unified than it was in the past.
Okay.
In that almost all of the artwork for the heroes particularly, and also the creatures for the co-op campaign, it has taken on a style that is more unifiedly, painterly, more like drawn sort of artwork, right?
Okay.
As opposed to the huge variance between like historical photograph looking art and then 3D render kind of art and painted art and sketch art. It's kind of come together more into a more consistent sort of colorful, a bit painterly, a bit sketch, which really gives it a more unified feel. Okay. Although you're absolutely right that the use of colors, the different styles of drawing, those kinds of little details are absolutely more variant, and you really see that between characters who appear that they're from different eras. Characters who are clearly like a science fiction kind of character versus characters who are really like a fantasy fiction kind of character. They definitely have different styles, and that's especially true for a lot of the historical characters who look very realistic.
Right. What's cool though too about the pictures on the cards is that it's not just whatever their face and they're standing still. It's usually them in some sort of scene with their environment.
It's beautiful,
around them as well. And so I really like that because it kind of gives you a little bit of a glimpse into each one of the characters.
Exactly.
So,
yeah. The one portrait of the squirrel captain over there,
totally,
with all of his like army in the background.
Totally Redwall, bro.
It's totally Redwall, and obviously for that reason I really love it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, which is really good. I think we also have to definitely highlight the map.
I was about to say the exact same thing.
Yeah, the map is incredible.
The map is massively improved.
Back here is
this whole cohesive thing put together, separated into the platters and keys.
Yep. Is really the map, pretty. Right? But man, if you take any sort of time to look at the map, you can see these fun little Easter eggs that are in there that again don't really like have to do with the game itself, but it just adds to it.
It's just pretty. Exactly.
It's great.
Just pretty, and I love the fact that you can literally make a poster board of the thing.
It
is gorgeous.
Are you gonna put that up in your house?
Probably, yeah.
Really?
I'd like to get one that has all the hexes, like the hex grid removed, so it's literally just the map.
Just the map.
And then just have it behind glass.
Absolutely
gorgeous.
I think I want this. I mean, I didn't know if you were gonna ask me the same question, but I was thinking shower curtain. Would be awesome, because just taking a shower, you're like, boy, I just love this map. I'm just gonna stay in the shower for another 5 minutes. So.
Factions received what Duel of Ages 2 could not, a full, dedicated art budget, and it shows.
What do you do as an experienced player to balance your efforts between combat and winning faction favor? Do you kind of want to explain the two separate sides of it?
Sure thing. So first and foremost, the way to win the game is still similar to Duel of Ages 2 in that there are key locations across the map which are controlled by various factions. You're trying to win their favor. To win their favor, you go to their sites, you perform various challenges for them, and as you succeed at those challenges, you get to put your team's markers on their faction challenge spaces. And for every faction that your team wins, you get 1 point of glory. Team with the most glory points wins the game. And then you get an additional point of glory if you have all of your characters surviving at the end of the game, having not lost anybody from the combat portion. And also you can get an additional point of glory from gaining favor with Lith, the mother of the games, as we talked about earlier as well.
Yeah, no, that's good.
So fundamentally, if you think about it, you can get a maximum of 1 point from truly succeeding in combat by having a flawless victory, no one dies, whereas you can get several points just from winning favor with the adventures. So inherently, the game tilts toward adventure. But if you lose adventurers due to combat, that hamstrings your ability to win the game. So there's a balance there between the push-pull of winning faction favor and getting the rewards for that, which help you with combat, versus actually performing combat to weaken your enemy's position to control the board.
Yeah. No, and that's really well said. I think some of that too is it comes down to what characters you have at the beginning of the game, right? And so you typically do want to have a fair balance between combat and adventure, unless you look at the board in front of you and you're like, some of these factions are in places that we can't get to because of the places of the domes, so maybe we don't want to do as many adventures, or you might see that the characters you have available to play on your team are a part of that certain faction, though, too, because there's 9 factions, and you get bonuses for those adventures in that faction, and you're like, man, I've got, 4 commoners that we can have in the commoner. All right, the green veil is like right there next to 2 domes.
Yeah, that changes everything.
Let's stack some of these characters so we can just dominate, this faction.
Yeah, because you gain special advantages for all characters who are bound to a certain faction if your team has a dominating effect on controlling that faction's favor.
Right, yeah.
So sometimes, even though you only get 1 point total from winning a particular faction, it can be so worth it to just go all in on a certain faction to give your characters a massive advantage.
Totally, which is not a great strategy all the time, but if you want to use that faction just to keep supplying like cards for your team, gold for your team, that's a way to win. And frankly, though, too, I think some of it just comes down to personality. Some people are going to lean towards more the, I just want to kill everybody in sight.
You get the aggressive people, you get the calculating people, right? Yeah. You get the people who just want to make sure their characters don't die.
Right.
There's a great difference in the ways that people play the game, and that comes out in how aggressive they play versus how much time they spend adventuring. Yeah.
You win factions by earning more glory than the opposing team, but there are only a few points to earn. 1 for each faction you impress, for a total of 5. 1 if you impress Lith, the queen of the games. And 1 if you have no heroes languishing in the underpit at game end. That's only 7 points, making factions the soccer of board games. But, in case of a tie, the team with the most gold in hand wins. So don't get too spendy.
Talk about the slip away rule in factions. How does it affect your strategy?
Okay, so basically what happens when your character is next to another character, right? You have the option of something called the slip away function, right? Which basically just means that you switch positions with that character, right? You just swap positions, and then your character has the ability to have 2 movement. So what's great about this is that in the old games, right, you could just get trapped basically behind, in a corner, and you'd have to try to get out, you have to go on top of their spot, and then their next move, they could just move back 1.
And so that also, there's a fundamental change to the game that's required to be explained before this question even makes sense necessarily, which is that in factions, you cannot stack multiple characters on 1 space.
Yeah.
It's like the transition from Civilization 4 to 5. It's now 1 unit per hex. And so for that reason, the positioning and movement is significantly more tactical.
Yeah.
Which brings us to the slip away function.
Right, exactly. And so, I think it's a great... here's the deal. You can still trap someone.
Absolutely.
Right? You just need multiple people to commit to trapping somebody.
Exactly.
Which again,
one person can no longer trap someone alone.
No. Yeah. Exactly. But trapping someone might be okay, but how many how many turns are you willing to commit to just keeping somebody in the corner?
Absolutely.
Unless you're just a straight bully, and then sure. So especially if you're losing already, you're like, I don't care.
Yes. Yes. I think that it really helps the game to give you more options for your movement. I think that it also makes it a bit harder for characters who are really strong in melee at the beginning of the game, right? Like Bladed Terror is a good example.
Yeah.
It's harder for them to just come out, corner somebody, and destroy them with that person having no recourse for saving themselves.
Yeah.
Because now you at least can switch places with that character, go a couple spaces. The enemy's still going to come right behind you because you only move 2 spaces. They're still going to come at you and they're going to try to catch you again. So they're at least going to get 1 more attack in for sure.
Right.
And then at that point, you're in a position where your terrain's more opened up and you can try to run to allies, run to a challenge so you can teleport somewhere else.
Right.
You have more options.
You have more options, right? And you can, and with the 2 movement afterwards, you can hopefully get away from melee that turn if that's just not what you want to do. Right, and maybe you can hope for one of your other characters to dismiss you or banish you or whatever, just try and get you out of that situation. And so I really like the function of it because it's hard playing games when you feel like you're just stuck and you don't have options, and this just gives you another option to like maneuver out of, of a bad situation. And so,
So now let me talk about the advanced and aggressive uses of slip away.
Sure.
Because before we talked about the defensive, the retreat kind of uses of it, but actually it has a lot of use in combat when you intend to stay fighting. If, for example, you are in a position where there's two people fighting you, right?
Right.
Then as your action for the turn, you could use the slip away to switch places with one of the enemies, and then choose not to move. You stay in place, so that when the melee phase begins, you're now in a 1v1 against a character that you chose to fight against, and the other character you've maneuvered away from, that character is no longer adjacent to you, and now you have a numbers advantage, especially if you switched into a position where now you're next to an ally who can join in on the fight, and you turned a 2v2 into a 1v2 for the enemy team.
That's what I was thinking too, is like you could just switch so that that more of your allies could, you know, be in reach to have melee.
Yep.
And so
That's right.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, and it can also be used to create line of sight for ranged attackers.
Oh, sure.
Like if your enemy is behind a building, right, and you ended your last turn next to them, use your action to slip away, you bring that enemy and you switch places with them, and then now that person could potentially be within line of sight of one of your ranged attackers for the turn that you're currently playing.
Yeah.
And then that ranged attacker can use their action to shoot that enemy, and then when melee phase begins, that person will probably be a few health points down, and you have a better chance of succeeding at the fight.
That's true. Hey, just make sure to like this video and to subscribe, right?
Yeah, and share it with anybody you think would be interested in learning more about the game.
Which should be everyone.